Today, I want to talk about the idea of changing the stories that we tell about ourselves and how journaling can be a gentle tool to support that. And I'm going to focus this conversation through the lens of narrative therapy. So, as many of you may know, I've been working through The Artist's Way with Liane from Liane Likes. And something that has been coming up for me over the course of the few weeks that we've been doing The Artist's Way. So we are on week 10 at the point of me filming this, is this idea that we are allowed to change, and how we can imagine or reimagine our path by giving our inner artists a little more room to breathe. So reconnecting with that inner artist, which reminds me a lot of reconnecting with your inner child, and the idea that we can reset our lives or the course or the path that we are walking on. So it reminded me a lot of something that I am personally interested in and often think about either in my work or in my personal journaling practice, which is narrative therapy. It is not the only approach out there, and I am not a narrative therapy expert, but I've always found it to be a very interesting approach, and I think it lends itself really well to journaling, or journaling lends itself really well to supporting some of the ideas of narrative therapy, especially when I'm feeling really stuck or really tangled in a narrative or story that I've told myself that I'm struggling to move past. So in today's video, I thought I would share a bit about narrative therapy, how it works, some of the ways I think it can overlap with journaling, and I'm going to share a few prompts that might or might not be helpful for you if you're interested in re-exploring or re-authoring your own story right now, especially around things like burnout, work anxiety, perfectionism, or maybe ADHD. If that sounds like something that you would be interested in, then I invite you to settle in, grab yourself a beverage, a snack, and something to keep you company and help you feel cozy while we hang out and chat. I am currently drinking a coffee, and my snack of choice today is, it doesn't look like much, but I am very excited about this snack. So my partner has been out of the country visiting family in Australia for the past few weeks, and he got back earlier this week. And one of the gifts that he got me is one of my favorite discoveries from Australia. Now, I have a feeling this is going to be polarizing, but I'm going to share it anyway. So I'm a big fan of black licorice. I should start there. I know not everybody likes black licorice, but if you happen to be a fan, then you might love this treat as much as I do. So these are called twists. It's a piece of black licorice that is wrapped in milk chocolate. So it comes in a dark chocolate, a milk chocolate, and I think I've maybe seen other variations, but my favorite is the black licorice with the milk chocolate. So it's, this is such a treat. I became obsessed with these when I went to Australia for the first time, and I made it my mission to seek out as many different variations of these and try them out. So I think some of my favorite candies of this type came from Margaret River. And my partner is from Western Australia, so most of my experience in Australia is in Western Australia. But anyway, these are so good. I think they're great with coffee. I like that they're not too sweet, and I love how soft and chewy the black licorice is. So this is what it looks like on the inside. So you can see it's like black licorice and then covered in milk chocolate. Because I have learned the hard way that I can't really journal and talk at the same time, today's going to be more of a chatty video, but I do have this page here to help me stay on track, but also hopefully have something interesting for you to look at. But feel free to have me on in the background and treat this as more of like a podcast. First, I want to talk briefly about what narrative therapy is. So, narrative therapy was largely developed by Michael White and David Epstein. I will leave some links and resources in the description in case you want to read into it a little bit more. The idea behind narrative therapy is that it is meant to help you step back from the critical stories that you may have internalized or absorbed over time. Like, I'm lazy, I'm too much, or I'm not good enough. And narrative therapy aims to help you see that these are patterns that you experience instead of thinking of them as part of as who you are. So it really offers space to reframe your story in a way that honors how you think, what you value, and what you've already overcome to get to this point. So instead of focusing on what's wrong with the person, it asks what stories a person has been told about themselves throughout their lives and challenges them to consider whether that is actually the whole truth. So I may have been told growing up that I was lazy or that I wasn't good enough. And over time, you hear these messages, you hear these stories, and you start to internalize them. And you might start referring to yourself as lazy. So I am lazy. I am bad. And narrative therapy really seeks to understand that, help you examine that, and then work towards telling a new version of your story, telling a new narrative. So there are 3 core ideas. The first one is identifying and separating yourself from the problem. Then it's exploring how the problem impacts different areas of your lives or mapping the effects of the problem. And then reauthoring your narrative. So beginning to construct a new narrative, one that really imagines who you are and what's possible when this problem is separate from you and you're able to free yourself from this problem defining you as a person. Let's say that I'm struggling with performance anxiety at work. So I am telling myself that I am not good at my job, I'm failing, that I'm going to get fired, that I'm not performing at the level that I should be performing at. So I'm telling all these stories about myself in that way. The first step would be, if we're looking at identifying and externalizing the problem, it would really be to understand the problem and start to externalize the problem and encourage yourself to see it as something that you experience rather than it being something you are. So they often say the person is not the problem is the problem. This stage really is about identifying it and externalizing the problem. So after reflecting on it, I might start to realize that I'm not an anxious overthinker, but I'm someone who often gets visited by like an evaluator who loves to critique from the sidelines. So there's this problem of an evaluator that is critiquing me. And for us ADHD folks, you might have a story like, I'm a chaotic mess, I'm disorganized. But the idea of externalizing the problem is saying, no, it's not that I am a chaotic mess. It's not that I am disorganized. It's that I'm someone who often gets visited by a critic who often fixates on all the things that are disorganized or all the things that are chaotic or didn't get done. So this can be done in a therapy session, but I think it can also be done through some reflective journaling. So I have a few kind of general questions that I think can help with identifying the problem itself and then starting to separate yourself or distance yourself from the problem. A few here are, what's a challenge or a struggle that's been showing up in my life lately? So this is meant to help you understand, like, what is the thing that you're really struggling with? And then we start to think about giving it a name. So if this challenge had a name, what would I call it? So it could be the darkness, the critic, the downer. And then when did I first notice it? How has it changed over time? If the problem were a character or a voice, what would it sound like? What situations or people give the problem more power? These are all some prompts that could be helpful for identifying and externalizing the problem. The next idea is that once you have a sense of the problem and you are able to start thinking about and referring to the problem as an external problem, then we want to start mapping the effects of the problem. And I think that journaling could be really helpful in deepening this understanding. So at this stage, we're asking things like when, where, what, how, that type of thing. I have a few prompts here as well. Questions like, when does the problem show up? What does it stop you from doing? How does it affect your relationships, your mood, or your self-talk? When does the problem get especially loud? What triggers it? And what parts of your life does it like to comment on? So by the end of this, if we're going back to my example of having performance anxiety, I might have determined that this critical voice shows up most when I'm about to present my findings at work in front of the exec team. And it stops me from thinking straight and speaking calmly. It tells me that I haven't done enough or that my presentation isn't going to have any impact. So now I've been able to say, okay, it's not that I am these things. There's something else that is showing up and interrupting me and preventing me from doing my best work and is making me second guess everything that I'm doing. Once we have a good understanding of the effects of the problem, then we can start the fun part, which is reauthoring your narrative. I've shared a few different approaches to doing this, and I think this is the fun part of narrative therapy, is that you can really start to get creative here depending on what excites you. And I think I saw elements of this in The Artist's Way as well, so it really reminded me of that idea that we can rewrite or reauthor our stories. So basically the intention here is that once we have a better understanding of how this problem affects us, we can work to create a new narrative that better reflects our stories, values, and identity outside of the problem. We're seeking a new narrative. We're seeking alternative stories that can help explain what's going on. We're challenging the original stories that we told ourselves. And this is where the transformation happens. And it includes some of my favorite questions that I like to use within my own practice. So even if I'm not necessarily following narrative therapy to a T, I do like to borrow interventions and different aspects in my work because I have seen how powerful they can be. So I've shared a few of things that I've used myself, and then I've also shared a few things that I've observed have been helpful for others. So the first one here is called unique outcomes. It's also sometimes referred to as exception questions. So we're asking ourselves to come up with the exceptions, the times that sort of discredits our original story. So if we want to look for a time when we were able to get something done despite having intense performance anxiety, for example. So Some general questions here could be, when was the last time I surprised myself in a good way? What happened? What's a moment that didn't go to plan but still turned out okay? I think they might seem obvious, but the power of engaging in this type of thinking, this type of self-analysis and going back into our memories and being able to find these alternative stories is so powerful. Some questions that I could ask myself if going back to this performance anxiety question, some questions that I could ask myself are, well, has anyone ever told you your insights made a difference even when you felt unsure? So if the story I'm telling myself is that my insights are useless and I'm no good at my job, well, find those examples because they're there. What feedback have you received that contradicts what the critical voice said? So you have this critical voice that's constantly causing a problem for you. What are some examples of when you receive feedback that contradicts all of that? And what are some examples of when others at your company have used your insights to inform their product roadmaps or their future work? This is a little specific to my role as a UX researcher, but these were very important questions that I had to ask myself when I was really struggling with some performance anxiety, or I was really struggling with imposter syndrome, that kind of thing. Another approach to help reauthor your narrative is preferred future. It's almost like envisioning how you would be if this problem were no longer a problem for you. So if we fast forward in time and this problem no longer is this loud voice, this problem is no longer getting in your way of doing things, how would you act? And what are the things that you would do instead? So what if I didn't have to get it right? What would I try? How might I define success in a way that feels more kind and meaningful? What kind of story do I want to be able to tell about this chapter in my life? Another really fun one is if you're really into music and you really enjoy movies, you can make a movie soundtrack for your new narrative and pick 5 to 10 songs to represent opening credits, where you've been, turning point or a plot twist, a montage of growth, thinking like Rocky running up the stairs, maybe a milestone and a celebration near the end of the movie when things are starting to conclude, and then a closing scene that represents who you're becoming. And something else that I've done before is thinking about movies in a series. So maybe movie 1 represents your previous life, and then there's a cliffhanger on the end of movie 1. And then movie 2 is all the songs that kind of represent like where you're going. So you can get really creative with this. And I think this one can be really fun and thing that you can do in your journal. The next one is something that I have already seen in the journaling community quite a lot, which is writing a letter from future you. So it's similar to the preferred future. You're imagining yourself a few years from now. You're really grounded. You're living in alignment. You're free from this problem. So you can write a letter from this future self to you today and give yourself advice or share some of the great things that you're doing now that this problem is no longer in your life. And the last one is something that was actually recommended to me. They called it like a brag file, but I'm going to call it an evidence file of your strengths. And basically you're keeping a folder or a document of compliments you've received, screenshots of kind messages, memories of moments you were proud of, maybe images that remind you of when you made a positive impact. So if you're doing this for a work setting, then looking at presentations that have referenced your work, or screenshotting metrics as a result of a project that you led. And all of this can be really helpful for you to reference in those moments where you're starting to doubt yourself or you're starting to feel that imposter syndrome. And as a bonus, it can also be really helpful for performance reviews. But I don't think it has to be limited to work. This is just the way that I've used it in the past. But I think you can also do something like this just for general life. So maybe if you're someone who struggles with self-esteem or confidence, then start to collect things that make you happy, or start to collect evidence that you are loved and you are making an impact, and that you have wonderful memories that make you happy when you look back on. And this is a great place for you to visit when you need a pick-me-up. It's very specific to you. And again, I think a journal is a great place for you to collect all of those things. So I love this idea, and I think it can be really impactful. Most research on the outcome of narrative therapy right now tends to be qualitative, so not really large enough samples for them to be considered significant. It's not as well researched as something like cognitive behavioral therapy, which is kind of like the gold standard in therapy, where everything is kind of compared to that, because there's just so much research done on cognitive behavioral therapy to date. It's a much easier therapy to study because it's a very structured type of therapy. But I will share some studies that I found that looked into the efficacy and the outcome of narrative therapy in the description if you'd like to learn more about it. This is just something that's been on my mind. It's been kind of brewing because I think as a result of the Artist Way journey that Liane and I have been on together. And if you have any questions or you're curious to follow along, we are sharing our conversations on a free tier on Patreon. So you are welcome to join both of our accounts. We alternate the weeks that we post our conversations. Really loving the community and all the insights we're getting from our community that's either doing the Artist Way along with us or are sharing their experiences from when they completed the Artist Way themselves. So it's been a really fun journey, and I feel there are a lot of parallels to different therapeutic approaches that I tend to really like, and narrative therapy is definitely one that stands out to me. At the end of our Artist Way conversations, Liane and I usually do a little stationery check-in. So I thought I would take an opportunity to do a little stationery check-in with you because I wanted to talk about some of the elements on this page. So all of the headings are written with my Benu Euphoria, and this is in a 1.1 stub nib. Don't know if you can see that. It's a bit dark in here today because it's quite cloudy. I currently have it inked with Dominant Industries Natural Green. And it does have a bit of a shimmer, but I always have trouble showing shimmer on my videos. But there is a really nice little shimmer, and this has continued to flow beautifully. So this continues to be a winner with shimmer ink. And then these beautiful washi tapes, all of this beautiful washi tape came from a little sample in some Happy Mail that Moonlit Journal sent me. She sent me so many goodies that I'm kind of freaking out. So I'm just having the best time finding places to use them in. And then all of these stickers, apart from this magnifying glass, came from Georgia Journals. And then this magnifying glass came from an Art Studio sticker pack. So, and then this black is all platinum carbon black in my Platinum Century 3776. in a soft, fine nib. All right, well, that's everything that I wanted to talk with you about today. So if you're still here, thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I really appreciate all of you so much. I look forward to chatting with you in the comments and learning from you. I hope you found this helpful. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you next week with an update on my One Book July experiment. And if you have any questions about that, leave them in the comments and I will do my best to address them in the next video. Okay, that's it. See you next week. Take care. Bye.